The ice didn't crack so much as whisper. Eli Sarin crouched near the excavation trench, visor fogged despite the heated suit, while the wind outside the temporary dome swept icy dust across the surface like angry whispers. Tharsis 9 had no air, no indigenous life, and until 3 weeks ago, no relevance. Now it was a pale grave of secrets, and Eli was here to listen. He rubbed warmth into his fingers, more out of habit than need. His breath sounded loud in his ears, echoing inside the helmet as he looked at the dark mouth of the uncovered chamber. Glacial ice had preserved the alien structure with eerie perfection, arched, seamless walls embedded with bioluminescent threads, symbols etched like a frozen language waiting to be remembered. Eli was supposed to be a xenobiologist. He had 3 degrees, 2 lab awards, and 1 very expensive set of lungs that had been replaced after a field mishap on Hadronis Prime. He wasn't supposed to be first in the queue to get scanned by an ancient alien biometric system just because he looked the least threatening. The scanner, a fluid, humming loop of metal and polymer, untouched by age, sat like an altar. The last technician to enter had scanned clean and walked right through. Routine clearance, no biohazards, just another artifact check. Eli had stepped in next. The scanner hummed, adjusted, then froze mid-rotation. Its light flared amber, then red. Then, the voice, a smooth mechanical monotone that translated seamlessly across 3 languages, spoke a sentence no one expected. DNA profile matched. 7 predator variants detected. Confirm activation protocol. Please choose. Which one do you want to wake up? Eli blinked. Sorry. What? The scanner repeated itself, then projected a swirling interface in the air. 7 rotating glyphs, each accompanied by a name and angular alien text, translated below in awkward Terran approximations. 1. Hollow Fang Drifter. Amphibious venomous predator. 2. Sky Splitter. Aerodynamic auditory-based hunter. 3. Ember Wolf. Thermivore stalking mammal. 4. Cystbinder. Viral infiltrator, cellular hijacker. 5. Iron Tongue. Bone-plated subterranean ambusher. 6. Reef Serpent. Aquatic filtration, apex predator. 7. Crownless Strider. Rapid regenerating plains carnivore. The silence that followed lasted only a second before alarms shrieked through the dig site. A klaxon one that had never been tested before blared as security drones pivoted toward Eli. Someone screamed in Paktharn, which Eli only recognized from the pitch of panic, and the dome lights shifted to pulsing blue. In under 30 seconds, he was locked in a containment pod, with 4 feet of shielded glass and 2 armed guards outside, neither of whom could look him in the eye. He didn't sleep the first night, or the second. The medical bay had been repurposed into a decontamination suite. Everything Eli touched was logged, scanned, and vaporized. An IV line fed into his arm, but the nurse, a jittery Eolari tech, who kept calling him Sir, like he might bite, barely checked the vitals monitor. The lead physician, Dr. Kalen Vosk, finally entered after 16 hours. Vosk was 6-limbed, compound-eyed, and so thoroughly composed it felt rehearsed. You are not ill, but you are not cleared. Your physiology is non-conforming. Eli coughed. You mean I don't have a tail? Vosk blinked an actual blink, from a secondary lid. Your DNA matches 7 Predator Prime profiles. This is not possible. Well, I didn't do it on purpose, Eli muttered. Vosk ignored the sarcasm and projected the scan results. Your genome presents dormant structures, pseudo-functional markers. They resemble the activation tags from predatory lineage constructs used in pre-eclipse biowarfare. Your body is expressing none of the active traits. Yet, so I'm a sleeping beast? You are an anomaly. Perhaps a relic. Perhaps a weapon that failed to launch. Comforting, Eli muttered. The tests began in earnest. Blood work, bone density scans, breath analysis, immune profiling. Eli tried to cooperate. What else was he going to do? But the longer it went, the clearer it became. His normal was terrifying. His blood could metabolize airborne mercury faster than most species could identify it. His muscles showed signs of fibrous microfracture repair cycling, what his own species would call normal post-exercise recovery. His retinas adapted to 2 lighting spectrums within 15 minutes. None of it meant anything to Eli. His DNA contains ancestral compatibility sequences with at least 7 recorded predatory primes. The fact that the scanner responded means it is functioning. The profiles are dormant, but this man can activate one. The Myron clicked a translator. You say he is dormant, but dormant does not mean dead. Calder stood. We have no record of these predator lines in human DNA. Earth fauna is diverse, but not weaponized. Yet this man contains thermivore activation tags, viral adaptives, multi-lung filters. Eli raised a hand. We evolved in chaos. Oxygen levels fluctuated, ice ages, plagues. You get weird when the atmosphere tries to kill you every 10,000 years. The Aolari elder studied him. So you're engineered by extinction? Eli didn't have an answer. That night, a technician brought food. When the tray clattered, Eli turned and saw the fear in the man's eyes. Not anger, not suspicion, just raw, ancient fear. He didn't eat much. 2 days later, the base lost power for 7 seconds. It returned with all systems on lockdown, internal life support rerouted, sterilization bots started sweeping unused corridors. Then the first body dropped in lab sector D3, an Aolari researcher. Eyes bleeding, skin cracked like old paint. The pathogen spread fast. It wasn't native to Tharsis 9. It wasn't native at all. The facility's internal AI flagged it as Class 6 transmutable bioagent. The air was deemed unsafe for over 80% of registered species. It mutated on contact with non-native biomatter. Vosk's team scrambled, but 10 were already infected. Human lungs held longer, but even Calder had a bloody nose within hours. Only Eli felt nothing. His oxygen sat steady at 98%. No fever, no symptoms. By the 6th hour, the scanner reactivated in the dig chamber. It pinged Eli through 3 doors and 2 lockdown layers. Wake protocol, suggested. Lifeform integrity threatened. Select profile to activate. Reef, serpent, aquatic filtration predator. Enhanced respiratory cleansing, adaptive hemolytic resistance. Compatible. Are you asking me, Eli whispered, voice dry, to mutate? No answer. Just the soft flicker of 7 glyphs. By hour 7, the base stank of antiseptic and melted insulation. A filtration unit groaned overhead, choking on biofoam discharge. The emergency seals along corridor C7 hissed, then gave a pathetic sputter before slamming shut entirely. It was too late. Airborne vectors had already seeped into adjacent domes. Eli sat on the edge of his cot, blinking back sweat and nausea that didn't belong to him. The scanner's prompt still pulsed in his mind, as if the words had been etched behind his eyelids. Reef serpent, compatible, respiratory filtration, hemolytic resistance, activate? He hadn't touched it. Not yet. Why me? He muttered to no one. Dr. Vosk appeared through the triple-sealed door minutes later, dragging an emergency respirator and 2 half-loaded antigen trays. Her gait was stiffer than usual, but she wasn't showing symptoms yet. Her voice was calm, too calm. You're still stable? Eli nodded. Better than stable. I feel fine. She set down the tray. Everyone else is either burning with fever or unconscious. I've isolated 6 strains so far, none resemble each other. It's changing too fast for inoculation. Eli's gaze slid to the internal display beside his bed. A schematic showed 9 red sectors, quarantine breaches marked with spinning hazard glyphs. Any idea who did this? There's a theory. A faction called the Darnathi Higira. Believers in genetic purity, they consider awakening a predator prime an existential sin. They think I did it. Worse. Vosk stared at him with those dark, emotionless compound eyes. They think you're a trigger, that your presence activated a fail-safe in the chamber. Eli took a breath, slow and deliberate. So, what, you want me to become one of them to fix it? Vosk didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a tablet from her belt and tapped it open. We logged the scanner's prompt. It recommends a match for your respiratory system. The reef serpent's profile shows rapid oxygen exchange and toxin filtration. You'd survive. You might even remain functional. You mean, not turn into a monster? I mean, stay alive long enough to help. Eli's laugh came out more like a cough. Do we even know what activation means? Not precisely, but we've isolated the switch neuromolecular override sequences embedded in ancient bioarchitecture. It's likely temporary, painful, possibly dangerous. He blinked. I was hoping for reassuring. I don't believe in false comfort, Vosk said. You are either immune for a reason, or you are being offered a terrible gift. By hour 9, the base had lost all 3 backup life support reservoirs. Calder was barely conscious, her skin gray and her breath shallow. Her voice rasped when Eli knelt beside her in the secondary med bay. I heard you're thinking about activating something. Eli shook his head. I'm thinking about keeping people alive. Same thing, she rasped. She gripped his wrist, not hard, but enough to mean something. Don't let it take you. Whatever it is. He didn't promise her. He couldn't. The chamber was colder now. The chamber scanner had remained powered, while the rest of the base flickered and died around it. The glyphs rotated slowly, like they were bored. Eli stood barefoot, wearing a hospital smock and nothing else, shivering under the dome's cracked shield. The air carried the metallic scent of ozone and filtered despair. The scanner flared as he stepped forward. It didn't ask again. It simply presented the same prompt. Reef serpent. Compatible. Activate profile. Confirm? He hesitated. The glyph shimmered an echo of an ancient creature with coiled spines and translucent gills. I want to live, Eli whispered, but I want to stay me. The scanner pulsed once, then it clicked. A soft hiss bled into the air, followed by a blue vapor that coiled around him like dry ice. It touched his skin, and he expected pain. Instead, there was heat. Then it hit. Every nerve in his lungs seized at once. He collapsed, clutching his chest as the air turned into acid. No, not acid, his lungs were changing. Cells split, membranes doubled. He couldn't breathe, not because the air was poisoned, but because his body was rewriting the instructions. He convulsed, teeth clenching as his ribs cracked outward. Not broken, expanded, cartilage softening, shifting. His breath returned in a gasp, filtered through something new. The agony spiked again. His vision went sharp, then blurred, then sharp again, edges glowing with thermal outlines. His skin itched as microscopic dermal nodules emerged across his arms, just under the surface, vanishing moments later. Eli screamed. It lasted 2 minutes. By the time he could kneel, the scanner had shut down. He stared at his hands. Still his hands. No claws, no scales. But they trembled with residual fire. Breathing felt effortless. By hour 10, he was walking through the east corridor without a suit. The air was deadly, but not to him. He passed through a cloud of spores that had eaten through myrin bone. His heart rate didn't even spike. In the engineering dome, 3 survivors huddled behind a broken bulkhead. He opened the panel and helped drag them out an Aeolari, a human, and a small gray-furred technician from a species he didn't recognize. They stared at him like he was a ghost. Don't touch me, he warned softly. Still don't know if I'm contagious. How are you alive? The Aeolari whispered. I made a bad choice, Eli muttered. Or maybe the only one I had. By the 14th hour, the pathogen began breaking down. Vosk's antigen sample, combined with Eli's blood, created a viable inhibitor. His transformed lungs had produced a secondary metabolite, something that neutralized 3 of the 6 active strains. He was no longer just immune. He was the cure. Recovery was slow. Calder woke the next day with shallow breathing but steady vitals. Vosk moved with a limp, having suffered neural inflammation from brief exposure. 2 of the rescued engineers lost fingers to necrosis, but they lived. No one else died. Not after Eli changed. 5 days later, the council reconvened virtually, as most species refused to be in the same system. Eli wore a mask and gloves, not to hide, but to keep them at ease. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the elder Aeolari diplomat leaned forward. You did not awaken a monster. But you awakened something. Eli nodded. It wasn't a weapon, it was survival. Adaptation. That's all it ever was. The Marin envoy hissed quietly. And what if the others awaken? What if more profiles become active? They're not hammers waiting for nails, Eli said. They're tools, and I didn't want to use any of them. Yet 6 remain. Eli looked down at the diagnostic imprint on his arm, 7 faint lines, 1 now glowing faint blue. 6 others dimmed, dormant. I didn't pick power, Eli said. I picked life. The recovery dome was quiet, almost reverent. A thin mist of sterilizing vapor hovered near the ceiling, casting pale reflections in the polished floor. Eli sat on the edge of his cot with a heating pad across his ribs and a long tube taped under his left arm. The pleural tap had drained fluid from his lungs, another surprise from the transformation. Not fatal, just uncomfortable. Very. Dr. Vosk monitored his vitals on a central screen across the dome, her arms folded tight across her thorax. The medbay was nearly full again, though this time most of the beds held patients recovering from the pathogen, not dying from it. You've stabilized, she said without looking up. Cell regeneration is within acceptable thresholds. No further mutations. Eli cleared his throat. Define acceptable. You still produce a small quantity of the filtration compound. We've started synthesizing it synthetically, which means you're no longer biologically necessary. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me this week. Vosk tapped her stylus. You remain under containment protocols. Not because we fear you, but because we don't understand what else might trigger another activation. Eli nodded, trying not to shift too much. His ribs still ached, the bruising spread like spilled ink across his left side. The medical estimate said 2 weeks until he could breathe fully without pain. The scanner hasn't said anything else? No. Vosk paused. But we sealed the chamber, permanently. He leaned back, careful not to jar the IV. So what now? Before she could answer, the external comms buzzed. An encrypted channel. Vosk stiffened, antennae curling. That's the diplomatic hall. They've reconvened. They want to speak with you. Me? Again? Eli's throat went dry. They consider you politically relevant. The hall had been hastily converted from a secondary cargo bay, but it still carried a presence. 7 projection pedestals stood in a semicircle, each occupied by a different representative species. A new addition appeared this time, a Haskari diplomat, their face shielded behind a woven visor of silver reeds. They hadn't participated before. Eli stood at the center with a compression band around his torso, boots too tight, and a throb in his shoulder where a muscle had torn during his brief transformation. Captain Calder stood behind him, still pale but steady. Her presence wasn't a comfort, it was a warning. The elder Iolari began. The situation has stabilized. The pathogen has been contained. Your action saved 36 lives. Eli nodded, unsure what was coming next. The Myron spoke next. We have questions about the legacy inside you. Ask. You accessed a profile of a creature extinct before the first eclipse. A reef serpent. Genetic archives say they required forced adaptation through invasive neurovascular rewriting. I didn't rewrite anything, Eli said. It was offered. I accepted. The Haskari leaned forward, visor glinting. You made a decision that altered your biology, voluntarily. Yes, the chamber murmured, some of the interpreters stumbling over the phrasing. And now, the Haskari continued, you carry an active predator genome, partially expressed. Adaptive. Unknown future potential. Eli exhaled. I know what you're trying to ask. No, I don't feel like I'm going to wake up one day with gills or fangs. But I can still breathe unfiltered air. I still process toxins faster than baseline. That's not going away. The Myron's tendrils twitched. This means you remain a potential risk. Captain Calder stepped forward, her voice steady. We've already begun voluntary medical supervision. Eli's undergoing regular sequencing. He's cooperating with EarthGov and interspecies regulation councils. Eli felt his jaw tighten. I'm not trying to be a threat, but if I hadn't activated that profile, you'd all be dead. The chamber fell silent. Then the Iolari nodded. We do not question your intent, only your uniqueness. The Haskari's voice dropped. Are there others? That struck deeper than Eli expected. I don't know, he said, honestly. Earth has millions of years of evolutionary chaos buried in our genes. If other humans were scanned, maybe they'd trigger different profiles. Maybe nothing at all. I wasn't chosen. I was just compatible. The Haskari folded their hands. Then, we must treat you as a prototype. Calder bristled. He's not a project. He's a man who made an impossible choice to save lives. And now, the Myron said softly, he carries legacy code that could destabilize entire bioregions if misused. Eli stared at the floor, fists clenched. They didn't see him. They saw the data, the possibility, the weapons buried in his marrow. He raised his head slowly. You want to know what I am? Silence. I'm a mirror, not of your fears of your past. You built creatures to survive war, but we didn't need to. Earth was the war. No apex predator survives forever. But if they leave pieces behind, evolution picks them up. Humans aren't weapons. We're a record of everything that tried to kill us. He paused. And we're still here. The Olari inclined their head. Then we offer a compromise. A tone pulsed through the room, and a new display shimmered to life. Eli's biometric data, spliced beside the 7 predator glyphs. Only one was lit. Reef Serpent, active. 6 profiles remaining. We propose observational exile, the Olari said. Tharsis 9 is to become a sealed research site. You will remain here under diplomatic supervision. If further profiles activate, they must be documented, studied, contained. Calder's voice dropped. He's not a specimen. No, the Haskari agreed. He's precedent. Eli closed his eyes. Not to fight, not to plead, just to breathe. His lungs expanded effortlessly, even here filtered, adaptive, unnatural. I'll stay, he said finally, but I'm not your legacy. I'm still human. In the weeks that followed, the facility was repurposed. No longer a dig site, it became a hybrid research sanctuary. Vosk led the genetic observation wing. Calder rotated between EarthGov liaisons and temporary sleep pods in the outer ring. She never left without checking in. Eli's body slowly settled. The pain receded. The bruising faded. The pleural tap was removed after 17 days. Follow-up imaging showed no further changes. But some things didn't return to normal. He could still see heat signatures with peripheral focus. He could still detect trace chemicals in the air before anyone else noticed them. And his blood, while stable, still produced fragments of the filtration metabolite. Trace amounts, residual, but permanent. You're not a monster, Vosk said during one scan. But you're not entirely what you were either. Eli just smiled. Neither is anyone after surviving something like that. One evening, he stood in the sealed observation chamber, staring at the dormant scanner. The 6 glyphs remained grayed out, no prompts, no movement. 6 months passed. Tharsis 9 never thawed, but the dome above base Halvex had been reinforced, extended outward, and buried deeper beneath the ice. No longer just a research outpost, it was now a quarantine sanctuary hybrid, the first of its kind. No one called it that officially, but everyone understood the unspoken purpose. Eli Sarin lived here. He hadn't left since the day he activated the Reef Serpent profile, not even for a breath of fresh air. Not that he needed fresh air anymore. The transformation hadn't reversed, not entirely. It never would. The adaptive lung structures remained. His resting heart rate now clocked 30 beats per minute, nearly amphibian level. His blood still synthesized micro-cleansing proteins, even in sleep. He could feel the changes when he dreamed, like his cells still remembered the sea-bound predator he had never been. The research logs grew long. Every week brought new tests, new sequences, new diplomatic questions. Yet, despite all the scrutiny, none of the 6 remaining profiles had reactivated. The scanner remained silent. Dormant, like him. Vosk had added a new assistant to her team, a human intern named Lena Muir, fresh from a biosciences program on Europa. She had sharp eyes and a quiet voice, and she treated Eli like a patient, not a puzzle. That helped. She entered the medlab one morning with a datapad tucked under her arm, hesitating at the threshold like she always did. Your blood work is back, she said, setting the pad down. And your enzyme readings are stable, actually better than baseline in some markers. Eli nodded, letting her place the wrist monitor. The cuff hissed gently. No new symptoms, he said. Still breathe fine, still weird at parties. Lena smiled, but didn't laugh. She lowered her voice. I saw the Eolari delegation leave this morning. They were just here to scan the chamber again, same result, scanners off. They're not sure it'll stay that way. He didn't answer. She hesitated again, then finally asked what had been circling for months. Do you ever think about choosing another one? He froze. Lena continued before he could reply. Just if the situation demanded it, if it happened again, another pathogen, or worse. Eli turned toward the scanner chamber, still visible through the observation window. The dormant glyphs lined its top edge like silent stars. I think about it, he admitted. A lot. Not because I want to, but because I remember how close I came to dying, and I remember how much it hurt not knowing what would happen to me. He shifted, winced slightly an old muscle tear that flared in cold air. It didn't make me stronger, he said. It made me less predictable. I don't think that's the same thing. Lena nodded. She didn't press further. That evening, the base received an encrypted ping from orbit, a long-range distress signal from an independent transport vessel Marin Ray. The call was broken, distorted, but clear enough. Unknown biological agent on board. Quarantine requested. Crew down. Automated systems failing. Base Halvex was the closest inhabited outpost. No one else could respond in time. The diplomatic council responded within the hour. Base Halvex was not authorized to break quarantine. Eli was not to leave, not to intervene. Vosk stood in the briefing room, silent as the message replayed. They'll die before help arrives, she said. They're already dying, Lena whispered. Eli stood in the back, jaw tight, hands behind his back. He didn't speak. He already knew what they were waiting for him to say. That night, he requested time alone in the chamber. Vosk allowed it, reluctantly. Eli stood under the scanner again, older, now not in years, but in weight. The reef serpent glyph still glowed faintly. The others were dormant. He stared at them. Each one a different story. Each one a different version of himself. But the scanner remained silent. No prompts, no invitations. He closed his eyes. I'm not doing this to be a hero, he whispered. I'm not doing this to be special. I just don't want more names in a file that says unrecovered. Nothing responded. Just the hum of the dome and his own heartbeat, steady as ever. And that was the answer. He didn't need to activate anything. He had already changed, and he was enough. Eli suited up for the first time in 6 months. The atmosphere outside was thinner than he remembered, the cold sharper, but it didn't bite the same way. The modified dermal layer beneath his skin regulated his heat with quiet efficiency. The Marin Ray's emergency docking rig wheezed as he climbed aboard. Inside, the damage was immediate, walls scorched, fluids crystallized in the air vents. 3 of the 6 crew were gone. 1 remained barely alive, locked in a stasis pod that had failed mid-cycle. Eli bypassed the contamination locks manually. His lungs filtered the unknown pathogen with ease. It wasn't the same as before. New vector, new structure. But it didn't matter. His blood adapted in minutes. He connected the stasis pod to the ship's backup power, stabilized the survivor,